It's time for another reading vlog. Was that too cheesy? It's time for another reading vlog, and this one I had the grand idea to read The Will of the Many and then The Strength of the Few together and upload it by whatever week we're going to be on, which I have forgotten, whatever Monday it was supposed to be. And that's not happening because The Strength of the Few is still not here, and its release date was on Tuesday, and it's currently Saturday. So this video is going up much later than I expected, but you guys will see it because I will be reading both, and that was the whole point. I thought this was a duology at first, and then I was watching someone's TikTok who had just finished The Strength of the Few, and the first line they said, or second line they said, was, "I can't wait for the third," or "I need the next book." And it's like, I thought this was a duology, but I'm going to investigate and see, and I may have just lied to myself, or other people were lying to all of us. I'm not sure. But I have been reading The Will of the Many without telling you guys, and I have a good reason. So this is The Will of the Many. Unless you've been sleeping under a rock for the past, I don't know, year and a half, you have heard of The Will of the Many. I have read this author's other trilogy, the Lycanis trilogy, and I had a really fun and great time with that. So I already knew that I liked his writing and his storytelling, but I was super surprised when I came back to BookTube and I saw how many people who normally aren't fantasy readers reading this book and giving it 5 stars. Like, out of nowhere. And so when I saw that, I was like, okay, I'll buy this book, but I don't want to read it until the second one gets here. Again, thinking that it's a duology. So that's how I got stuck here. Now, I am 400 pages in currently. My bad. Due to some big life changes, I have been exhausted every single day this week, and more than likely next week I will also be deathly exhausted. With that, it means I don't think there's going to be many updates between these two books, or as we can tell while I'm reading this book, because I am just too exhausted to do more work than is outside of my normal workday. So let me tell you what The Will of the Many is about, and then my feelings on it. The story is we're following a boy named Vix, who's 17 years old, and at the start we are seeing what his job is, which it seems to be something like a warden or jailer that oversees what are known as sappers. In this introduction, we also meet a couple other characters, and one of these characters is asking to see one of the sappers, which isn't unusual, but it is the middle of the night, so that's kind of odd. Vix shows this man down to this person, and when there's an interaction between the two people, he understands the language that they're speaking, even though it's a dead language, and he tries to brush it off, be nonchalant, like he's not understanding anything. We then follow Vix going to basically a fight club, and it has some really cool characters though, and I wish we would see them again, but I highly doubt we will due to some other things. But he gets into a match that surprisingly should have been very difficult for him, and then it turns out not to be because he was pretty slick at what he did, using what he could against someone who was much more powerful. And then he goes home to the orphanage where the person running the orphanage says, "Give me all your money and then you can go to bed. Oh, and by the way, someone's coming tomorrow for an adoption and I need you to help me in the morning." Vix goes to bed. We wake up, and the person who's going to be adopting a child today is the same man who went to his work the night before. It's not a coincidence, obviously. This man and him get into an interview setting, and turns out this man needs a bit of help. He needs someone of age to go to the prestigious academy and infiltrate it and figure out what the hell is going on there, because something shady is happening and he wants answers. Vix, with his own priorities and personal vendettas, wants to also go to this academy and try to figure more out how the hierarchy works, and he gets adopted. He goes with this man. I would say chaos ensues, but also it gets calm fairly quickly. And that's the summary of part 1. This book is sectioned off into 3 parts. The second part is about the academy and his start there. And then the third part is, my guess, is whatever trouble Vix gets himself into. Honestly, I think that's really what it's going to be. There are a lot of big events that happen in this book. Within the first, I would say 200 pages, there's a really big event. Maybe it's around 300. That also makes Vix kind of famous in this world, but it's a really good thing for him at the time. So, my thoughts and feelings so far. Originally in the first part, I was kind of like, okay, this is just the start of someone's life and we're just getting used to him, and I don't mind his character that much. He doesn't annoy me, which is great, but I'm not getting a vibe of I'll like him more or less during the entirety of the book. So that was good. I also liked a lot of the other side characters. Like I said earlier, they were very interesting and fun, and I've been listening to the audio, and the person who is narrating it is also doing voices with some of the characters, so that's been really fun. Once we got to part 2, there was a point where there's a fight that happens. That fight for me solidified that I am going to like this book. I'm going to like this series because, one, the description of the fight was fantastic. It was great writing. 2, it also connected Vix's story to so many people that he finally has made relationships very strong with people in his age group that he trusts, which I don't know if he should be trusting all of those people. And I think he also agrees that he doesn't need to be trusting a lot of those people. But it's a good thing to note that he stands up for himself and people agree with him standing up for himself. Once that chapter happened, I'm like, okay, I am seated. I am ready. I can't wait for the rest of the 200 pages that are left. That is where I'm at. I will say I have no idea the complexities of this world. The will is how they use the will of others to power things and like to be strong, which again, I still don't fully understand how they're doing it. The sappers is how they're doing it, but I don't get how it connects to the individual who saps all of the will from those people. As always with these kind of political intrigue books, there's something going on in the hierarchy that's very, very bad, and Vix is going to be at the center of figuring it out along with his adopted father. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. I hope the second book gets here soon enough so that I can start it right away, and hopefully when I see you next time, it will be an update to this book and me starting The Strength of the Few. Okay, this is my check-in for The Will of the Many, and I have finished this book. I don't know what to say about this book that already hasn't been said, but the last, I want to say 30 pages are a whole unveiling of a new story, and I'm very, very excited to get into it. But let me tell you how the rest of the book was. I think the last time we talked was I was 400 pages in. I was really enjoying myself after having a difficult time getting into it, and the last 200 pages honestly felt so fast. Almost every single chapter, once they started their trial, is what I'm gonna say it is. Once that started in the story, I think every single chapter my heart was racing all the time. I was so nervous for everybody. I didn't want anyone to die, but of course I knew something was going to happen. So when it gets to the point where it's so high anxiety and stress inducing, then there is this cliffhanger that happens. And then we have this very mournful, sad thing happen that is then kind of given a present in disguise at the end. I think that's the best way I can say it without spoiling. There's some softness that happens, a kind of thank you to someone. And then we get the real banger, which I think is the last 10 pages of this book. And I'm not gonna say I called it, but I know this author very well, and I know what the Like Kansas trilogy was about, and I am not surprised with the last 10-ish pages of this book, because this author very, very much likes that theme, and I think the theme is a huge spoiler, so I can't even say what it is. As of this book, there is still only one POV that we follow, but I have a hunch the rest of the books are going to be a little bit different. I looked it up last night when I finished this book. Apparently it's going to be a 4-book series, which if these books are coming out the way they are currently, which they're every other year they're being published, let's hope this man can keep up with that. The last book will be published in 2029, and I will be sad for it. I will be waiting, unfortunately, for my wallet, but absolutely for my dopamine and happiness. So I read most of this book via audio, and I did like the narrator. However, the microphone was a little bit weird. It wasn't as crisp as usual, so I'm not sure what happened there, but I'm very thankful that I'm able to pick it up outside of Audible. And I bought the second one because it's still not here, you guys. That book, not here. I'm not stressed about it or anxious or nervous or annoyed or frustrated. I'm fine. So yeah, if the USPS could get to my apartment as soon as possible and drop off the physical copy, that would be great. This is also why I had to buy the audiobook so that I could jump into it this Sunday afternoon at some point. So yeah, this was a great read. I'm so glad tons of people hyped it up and recommended it. It's not an overhyped book. It's actually a fantastic and joyful read. So with that being said, I will update you guys once I start reading The Strength of the Few. It finally arrived. Yeah, it's here now. So I finally have Strength of the Few in my hands, as you can clearly see. And I am about 180 pages in, or maybe 190, something like that. I don't know how much of this book I can actually talk about in detail with you guys because one, it is the second book, and two, spoiling a book that was published in 2023 does feel bad when the series is still not fully out. So I'm going to try my best. The first thing I will mention, also I'm putting the book down because it's heavy. So what can I say? One, the writing is still really, really good. I still really love the main character we're following. In this second book, I don't think this is technically a spoiler. There are different points of view brought in, which I am really, really liking each story we're getting. I really like how each of these viewpoints are showing us a different angle of this world in a light that our main character didn't even understand originally, and that's been really cool to see and unearth. I will mention I'm having thoughts about certain creatures that seem a little bit similar to what happened in the third book in this trilogy that Islington also wrote that has similar guardians is what I'll call them. And I'm like, okay. They look entirely different and act they don't act entirely different, but they definitely look different. But I was like, oh, I see that nod. I see that nod to your first trilogy. From the last book, what I can say that I don't think is a spoiler is we are following this. Also, I've been pronouncing his name incorrectly because listening to the audiobook, I thought it was Vix, but it's spelled Vis. So I've been mispronouncing his name. Anyways, there's still so many questions about the trial afterwards, especially politically. I have so many questions that are more integrated into the politics of the world, and we're probably not going to get there until the end of the book, and my hunch is probably book 3 is going to have more of those answers as well. This feels like a series that's going to have a lot of questions, and most of them may not be answered until book 4. And though I like that, I'm also slightly impatient because this series is so good that I don't know if I have it in me to wait like 4 to 5 more years for everything else to come out, but I gotta wait. And I think what's great is that as long as this series has a lot of momentum from the readers that are enjoying it so much, that gives momentum for the writer to be like, okay, I should probably finish this. And again, we know that he can finish series, so we got that going for us. Otherwise, the narrator is the same from the last audiobook, so that's good. I'm having a great time. I don't really know what else I can say about book 2. I really wish I could be annotating this book right now, but I don't have all of the things yet to annotate. So, and I'm also not reading this physically right now. It's mostly audio because at work, that's the easiest way to read. And I'm glad I have those days to do it. But it's like there's certain things that will pop up that a character will say, or there'll be a reference to what Will can do. Because that's basically the magic-ish system is the will of a person gives you strength, not just using these titles of these books, but it gives you the strength to imbue things and to, and in essence, puts magic into stuff, at least in objects. And that it's basically kind of a lot of security systems. It's almost like it's a version of tech in this world. It's less so magic and more so tech in my brain of how it works. Okay, I finally did it. I finished The Strength of the Few. Here it is in all its glory. I just finished it this morning. I have a lot of thoughts, but a lot of those thoughts I can't really talk about because it would be spoiler heavy, and I'm really trying to keep this spoiler free as this book just came out, and also its previous book just came out like a couple of years ago. And if I talk about this in depth, it's going to spoil the last bit in the first book, and I just really don't want to do that for those of you who are interested. So I'm going to try to keep this as spoiler-free as possible. I believe I said earlier in this reading vlog that there's 3 different POVs that we are following. One person is focusing on infiltration. That's how I'll word it. Then there's another person who is focusing on really not attaching themselves to Will, just like how Vis was thinking about that during book 1. And then Vis, we are following his deep dive into politics and what that means for him as he leaves the academy and is trying to find himself in a slew of a lot of corruption. So with that being said, I can talk about the writing, which it's very consistent to the first book. It was very easy to follow. It felt a lot more elevated than Islington's previous trilogy. I can also say that the writing was consistent for all the POVs. It didn't feel like any of the characters were veering away from what seemed to be their personality and what their interests were or what their drive was. We also got a lot of new lore when it comes to languages, how the hierarchy works, and fighting techniques. There were quite a few more introduced into this one. We also got a lot of new information on the use of will. This learns a lot of new stuff and learns how to, I think the word's imbue, basically transferring will. So the one thing I had an issue with this book was the pacing right dead in the center. I think it was at least by page 400, there was a point where I felt like all the POVs felt too alone. And it felt very disengaged from what was happening in the world. We were so focused on these singular people that I was kind of just getting bored, and it felt more like I had to push through a lot of those chapters in order to get back to the semblance of those people working together with others again. I really don't like in fantasy when we are with one person by themselves for too long. It feels too insular, and then I don't get to learn anything more about the world. We're just in one person's head with one perspective. And sometimes that just feels a little bit too small when the scale feels much larger. And especially since we're in book 2 now, it's not like we don't know what's going on. There's still a lot of questions still to be answered, but I don't want to feel so alone with this character. I want to see them talk to other people. I want them to figure out problems with others and work together. But that couldn't happen all the time during this like middle section of the book. It started to pick up again by like around 600, 650, which is very close to the end of the book, which makes sense because very big and large things are happening at the end. So we do end on a cliffhanger for book 2, and I am not annoyed by this. I think it's a very smart move, obviously, because we're in the middle of the series. The one thing that I think Islington has done very, very well, as I've seen with his previous works, is keeping the reader engaged with the storyline as you continue into the series. And I think he's doing it even better this time around with hierarchy. When it got to the last 3 chapters, just like in the first book, the last 3 chapters have cliffhangers that we will not get answers to for another couple of years, and they're probably now my biggest concerns and things that I was already thinking about going forward. I was like, okay, so this is the whole drive for these 3 perspectives. So what's the drive going to be for book 3 and 4? Because this sounds like a very final boss drive for the plot. So the plot is thickening. The plot is getting more confusing, but I love it. I did enjoy my time in this book. I gave it a 4.25 as of right now. When it comes to thinking about my enjoyment of the book, I just was emotionally a little bit preoccupied with my life, and so pushing through that really slower section may have just been also me not enjoying it, whereas again, the last 50 pages or so were really, really good. I was already thinking of giving the book 4 stars, but it bumped it up to 4.25 because of those cliffhangers and that intrigue. With that being said, this reading vlog is now going to be coming to a close. Do I think you should read Hierarchy? Yeah, I really think so. If you really want to dive into a new adult high fantasy series, I think it's doing a really, really great job and doing more exploratory things that I haven't seen in a very long time in fantasy books. I also think it's something that Islington is very much obsessed with, lovingly. I'm saying obsessed lovingly, but he very much likes a theme. So I definitely will be picking up book 3 once it is published. I do love the world that's being created. I do love the characters that we are seeing. And not to mention, this author doesn't care if you love a character. They will die. They will die. So don't get too attached to anybody. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.